Welcome back to another episode of College Football Legends, where we dive deep into the captivating stories of the game's greatest heroes. Whether we admit it or not, there is a hierarchy within the game of college football. We have our elite top-tier programs that are always in the hunt for the national championship. Then we have our middle-of-the-pack teams that are just hoping to have a winning record in hopes of playing for a bowl game. Then we have our teams on life support that usually find themselves scheduled for the larger program's homecoming game or season opener, and that game within itself is usually predictable and it results in a lopsided score that's pretty much boring to watch. These teams are normally referred to as cream puffs or cupcakes, and they serve as a tune-up game for the powerhouse program before they enter the more challenging part of the season. On the rare occasion, they do the absolutely unthinkable, and against all odds, they play outside of their minds, taking down their heavily favored opponent. So today, we're continuing our 5-part series covering the top 5 memorable, mind-blowing, and most improbable upsets in college football history. If you like this type of content, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss an episode of College Football Legends. The Florida State Seminoles are one of the premier programs in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and they boast 3 Heisman Trophy winners in Charlie Ward, Chris Weinke, and Jameis Winston, who have all led their respective teams to national championships in 1992, 2001, and 2013. As a program that's been built brick by brick by the legendary late great Bobby Bowden, they have produced some of the greatest future stars in the National Football League. Doak Campbell Stadium is home to the Florida State Seminoles, and they have one of the most electrifying pregame rituals in all of college football. When the Seminoles run out of that tunnel wearing those garnet jerseys and gold helmets while the band plays that iconic war chant, which is actually one of my personal favorites, it creates an absolutely electric environment for the 80,000 in attendance. It's awe-inspiring, and in some cases for the visiting team, it can be absolutely terrifying. What happens when this storied program is in the midst of a rebuilding year and they face a team from the lower tier football championship subdivision that's composed of players that have been underrated, overlooked, and outcasted by the premier programs within Division I, and they play with a chip on their shoulders as they have absolutely nothing to lose. It sets the stage for one of the most unexpected and improbable upsets within the game of college football. So in today's video, we're going to cover the shocking and mind-blowing upset of the Florida State Seminoles at the hands of the Jacksonville State University Gamecocks. Jacksonville State University, not located in Florida as you would think, is in northwestern Alabama, and their home field, Amherst Stadium, holds less than 25,000 people, and they've earned 25 conference championships and won a sole Division II national championship in 1992. Not exactly the resume of a team capable of beating one of the noteworthy programs in the Atlantic Coast Conference. On a fateful day in early September, which many expected to be an early season routine beatdown of a helpless Division II program by one of the blue bloods of college football, would unexpectedly give us one of the most mind-blowing finishes of the 2021 season. Florida State was coming off of an epic season opener showdown as they would suffer a disappointing 41-38 overtime loss to the 9th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and this Notre Dame team would eventually go on to participate in that season's college football playoff. Jacksonville State, on the other hand, they were absolutely crushed by mid-major UAB in a devastating 31-0 loss. Both teams had yet to find themselves in the win column. Florida State was just trying to get back on track, and Jacksonville State, on the other hand, they were just trying to keep this game relatively close against their heavily favored opponent. From the opening kickoff, for everyone in attendance and those watching at home, they witnessed 2 teams that were completely out of sync, committing critical mistakes that kept both teams out the end zone and of course off the scoreboard. First off, Florida State, they hadn't quite settled on a quarterback, which is between Jordan Travis and McKenzie Milton. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, McKenzie Milton led the Central Florida Golden Knights to an undefeated season in 2017, capping it off with a defeat of the Auburn Tigers in the Peach Bowl. Unfortunately, in the following season, he would suffer a devastating injury that almost ended his playing career. Despite making a miraculous recovery, he was forced to transfer, and he chose Florida State as a place to rebuild his career. McKenzie Milton's counterpart and backup Jordan Travis would unfortunately suffer the same fate 2 seasons later, as he too would suffer a devastating injury that prematurely ended his college football career as well. Early on, Florida State's rocky start on offense would set the tone for most of the first half. Despite his accuracy, quarterback McKenzie Milton struggled connecting to his receivers. For example, on one particular play, he actually hits his receiver in stride. Despite this, he drops the ball, which would have easily been a touchdown. This is one of many critical drops for the Florida State receiving corps that actually kept the game closer than it should have been. Head coach Mike Norvell experimented with inserting backup Jordan Travis on running plays. Unfortunately, this didn't yield positive results, as the Jacksonville State Gamecock defense was able to hold strong most of the first half. After a scoreless first quarter, Jacksonville quarterback Zarek Cooper engineered an 80-yard drive, capping it off with a 2-yard touchdown from Pat Johnson. Later in the second quarter, Jacksonville's offense continues to roll, and they drive all the way to inside the 20-yard line, and it appears surprisingly they may go up on the Seminoles 14-0. But defensive end for the Florida State Seminoles, Derek McClendon, wasn't having any of that, and on the very next play, he crushes running back Pat Johnson, causing a fumble, and it's recovered for a 25-yard return. Despite Florida State's offense and how stagnant they had played most of the game, defensive end Derek McClendon had actually kept the Seminoles in the game with his dominance off the edge and at the line of scrimmage. The Florida State offense capitalized on that turnover as Jarshawn Corbin scores on a 12-yard touchdown run, tying it at 7 apiece. Of course, running back Jarshawn Corbin continues to find rhythm, in addition to the Florida State offensive line opening up running lanes, and on the very next drive later in the second quarter, they're able to drive the ball all the way down to the 5-yard line. This is when quarterback Mackenzie Milton hits his receiver in the back of the end zone, and this 5-yard touchdown pass gives Florida State a 14-7 lead, as they go into halftime with all of the momentum on their side. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge that in our previous videos of the biggest upset series, usually the underdog burst out of the starting blocks like an Olympic sprinter, getting a very large lead against their opponent and setting the tone most of the game. They're able to keep the game out of reach, even despite a late rally by their favorite opponent. This game in particular is just slightly different. Despite Florida State's slow start, they had control most of the first half, and this momentum would continue until late into the fourth quarter. Florida State was able to find some rhythm running the football into the third quarter, and they were able to keep Jacksonville's offense off the field and in turn off the scoreboard. Running back Treshaun Ward was able to cap off some really large gains, putting the Jacksonville defense on their heels. Despite their success running the football, they weren't able to really convert these large gains on the ground into touchdowns, yet Florida State was doing everything right on offense, defense, and on special teams, except for scoring touchdowns. For example, they were able to pin the Jacksonville State Gamecocks deep inside their own 1-yard line. On that following offensive possession, Florida State was able to add a field goal to their lead, making the score 17-7 as the third quarter expired. Going into the final quarter of the game, they had a 10-point lead with all the momentum going for the Florida State Seminoles. I want to be clear, a 10-point lead is not a large margin by any stretch of the imagination, but you would think a team of Florida State's caliber against a lower tier FCS program, they would make this game slightly out of reach for the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. The Florida State Seminoles had not made any critical mistakes up until that point. Quarterback Mackenzie Milton did throw an interception to young defensive back Jamari Jemison of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. Now, this wasn't exactly a bad throw on his behalf. The young cornerback broke perfectly on the ball and snatched it away from the receiver, and he returned it all the way down to the 20-yard line, putting his team in scoring position. Despite the spectacular play made by Jacksonville's freshman cornerback, they weren't able to convert this turnover into points. Both teams actually struggled capitalizing off of their chances on offense, and this specifically would really come back to haunt the Florida State Seminoles. For example, Florida State's offense drives all the way down to the 3-yard line on a 4th and goal scenario. Quarterback Mackenzie Milton hits his receiver for a spectacular catch in the back of the end zone. Unfortunately, the receiver steps slightly out of bounds, ruling the pass incomplete, and this failed 4th down conversion gives the ball right back to the Jacksonville Gamecocks. The Jacksonville offense hasn't really shown any signs of life most of the game, and after that epic defensive stand that yielded a turnover on downs, now Jacksonville has to go 97 yards in order to score a touchdown. Against a Florida State defense that's pretty much held them in check most of the game, mostly due to their dominance at the line of scrimmage, the odds were definitely not in their favor. Surprisingly, Jacksonville State's quarterback Zarek Cooper engineers a 10-play 97-yard drive, capping it off with a very impressive 23-yard touchdown reception to wide receiver Ahmad Edwards. Now, we're looking at a 14-17 game, and despite how close this has become, Florida State has all of the leverage because they're in the position that everybody wants to be in, at least in this particular situation. They have the ball and the lead. Despite how scarily close this has become for the Seminoles, they still have the advantage in this game, only if they achieve one of two objectives. They can either A, get at least 2 or 3 first downs, and this would all but run out the clock, or B, score a touchdown of course, or at least a field goal. This would A, increase their lead, and B, they would chew enough time off the clock that would make it virtually impossible for the Jacksonville Gamecock offense to answer. However, if they were able to effectively execute either one of these two scenarios, I wouldn't be making this video. Damn! So here we are, it's 3rd down and 1 with 1 minute and 47 seconds left to play, and the Florida State offense only needs 1 yard to get a first down, and by doing so, that would pretty much take enough time off the clock, narrowly escaping this potentially embarrassing upset. They decide to run the ball off the right tackle, and they are stuffed by the Jacksonville State defense, and they're forced to punt. Now, many argue that they should have gone for the 4th down and 1 conversion, but failing to do so would have put Jacksonville State on a short field, and they could have easily kicked a field goal, forcing overtime. The decision to punt pretty much forces the Jacksonville offense to earn the yardage needed to either tie the game or take the lead. And boy, did they ever earn every single yard, because they were about to make history, and from Florida State's point of view, for the wrong reasons. Jacksonville State is able to get a pair of first downs from a very clutch catch from P.J. Wells on a 3rd down conversion and a quarterback scramble from their quarterback Zerrick Cooper. These 2 conversions on 3rd down keeps their offense alive. Despite Jacksonville's ability to move the chains and get first downs late in the game, they find themselves with only 6 seconds left to play, and they're on their own 41-yard line. Of course, they are obviously out of field goal range, and they're 59 yards away from the end zone. ESPN.com Analytics had predicted a 97.7% chance of Florida State winning based on this particular scenario. However, what the analytics did not predict is what we were about to witness. With 6 seconds left to play, many predicted that Jacksonville was going to run at least 2 plays. However, Zerrick Cooper hits his receiver in stride deep into the end zone, and he stops on a dime, avoiding the FSU defenders, scoring the walk-off touchdown. It is deathly silent in Doak Campbell Stadium, as you can literally hear a pin drop as the Florida State Seminole faithful is stunned. Jacksonville State has done the absolutely impossible by knocking off the Florida State Seminoles, and in turn defeating their very first Power 5 program in school history. And that particular play made by Damon Johnson makes the highlight reels for the entire 2021 season. After a devastating loss to this magnitude, many have predicted that Florida State's best days were behind them, and finishing the season with a 5-7 record would have bolstered this prediction. However, the following season in 2022, the Seminoles finished in the top 10 with an impressive 10-3 record. And at the making of this video, which is the most previous season, they had an impressive, outstanding 13-1 record, narrowly missing the college football playoff. Many would argue that Florida State was snubbed, mostly due to the devastating injury of their star quarterback Jordan Travis. However, going into the college football playoff selection show, they were undefeated. It was obvious that their offense was a shell of them former selves without their star player. As for Jacksonville State, this game was pretty much the highlight of their season, as they would post a lackluster 5-6 record. They too would trend in the right direction, first by hiring head coach Rich Rodriguez, and they would in the 2022 season win the Atlantic Sun Conference Championship. And in the following year of 2023, they would move up to Division I as a member of Conference USA, winning their very first bowl game in school history. What were your thoughts on this particular game? Personally, I believe Florida State's offense squandered so many scoring opportunities, it led to their epic 4th quarter meltdown. Let's continue this conversation, because I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video just as much as I enjoyed making it, and if you want to continue this countdown, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode of College Football Legends, where we celebrate the unforgettable players and moments that define the sport we love. Until next time.